Dumpster divers, what's your greatest discovery? Back in 2001, I found a Pentium 4 desktop. Those were basically brand new at the time. It had misseated RAM and was otherwise in perfect working condition. The week before, cops stopped me when dumpster diving behind a computer repair shop and asked what I was doing. When I told him and that there were no signs saying no trespassing nor a locked dumpster, he not only agreed what I was doing, but in fact helped me load my car. I got a perfectly good monitor out of that, and the motherboard that would become my server for a few years.
That's a pretty cool find. It's interesting how things like that just pop up when you're not really looking for them. The cop helping you out is unexpected too. Not something you hear about every day. It's kind of nice to see people being helpful in random situations. That Pentium 4 must have been fun to tinker with, especially since it had some life left in it. Good times for sure.
Not me, but the nasty meth head that comes by where I work every day. He just hit 600,000 bottle caps to donate to the Ronald McDonald House. They get some kind of refund/recycling money. Guess it's not the best dumpster find, but mad respect for someone who doesn't have it all together digging through trash cans to donate.
That's an interesting story. It's surprising how some people can give back in unexpected ways. Finding value in what others throw away shows a unique perspective. It's a reminder that even those who seem lost can still do something good. Makes you think about the different paths people take and how small actions can have an impact.
I found about 1,000 feet of Christmas lights in the Goodwill dumpster one night. Brought it to my college house and crisscrossed the entire backyard with lights. That same night, I bought a keg and we threw a big party under the lights. Great times. Another time, found a perfectly good Schwinn World Sport circa 1979 bicycle. It had a rusted chain and cracked tires. Gears needed adjusting, new seat, new cables. Fixed it up for $60 in parts. It served me for 5 years I was in college until a heavy friend borrowed it and cracked the frame. I missed that bike. As a way to give back, I was getting rid of my worldly possessions when I graduated. I handed this 15-year-old kid outside my house my longboard, put out my paintball gun, sleds, and other kid stuff, which were immediately picked up by a band of neighborhood hooligans. The more you give, the more you find.
That's a solid story. Finding stuff in dumpsters and making it work is a vibe. The lights must have looked great at the party. And reviving that old bike is impressive too. It's crazy how something discarded can serve you for years. Giving away your things when you graduated is a nice touch. You passed it on to the next generation. It's true, sometimes you can find good stuff when you let go of things.
I don't dumpster dive on a regular, but moved into my new apartment a year ago to a flat panel TV sitting in the dumpster. Snatched it up and gave a new power cord, and it worked completely fine. I guess whoever got rid of it had just upgraded. Ended up selling it on Craigslist to the owner of a local pizzeria for $100, and he hooked me up with free food from the pizzeria that night.
That's a solid find. Dumpsters can surprise you sometimes. A TV that just needed a new power cord is a win, for sure. Selling it for $100 was a nice bonus, and getting free pizza on top of that is a good deal. It's always nice when things like that work out. A little extra cash and food doesn't hurt. Just goes to show, keep your eyes open.
My mom's boyfriend lives outside of West Palm Beach. He makes really good money as an engineer, but goes dumpster diving where the rich people live. Holy crap, you would be shocked at the things they throw away. He's found 1-year-old MacBooks that people just threw away because a new one came out. He found a $500 grill that someone left by the road because they bought a more expensive one. Lots of big TVs and furniture as well. What he likes doing best, though, is salvaging building materials. People renovate there all the time, so he asks the owners if he can take tile or cabinets they're throwing out. Some of the tile he's taken sells for $20 a piece. He gets the new tile, and the millionaires don't have to pay to have someone haul it away. He's a really stand-up guy too. He rebuilds computers he finds and gives them to the elderly so they can keep up with their families. He used all of the expensive tile he found to make my mom a new kitchen island. Dumpster diving is great if you know where the rich people live and don't mind asking if you can have their trash.
I know someone who does something similar. There's a guy in my neighborhood who checks the big dumpsters behind the fancy stores. He finds all kinds of useful stuff, furniture, electronics, even clothes. It's wild what people throw away. He cleans it up and donates what he can. Makes a difference for a lot of people. It's cool to see someone turn trash into something useful, especially when it helps others. Simple but effective.
This kid I knew used to know had a few spots he would hit regularly. One was an office supply type place where he would find working electronics and good furniture sometimes. Someone had cleaned out a house, probably after an old lady died, and tossed it in this store dumpster. Dresser drawers still full of shit and a lot of clothes. Inside a wooden box that was in her stuff, a few hundred cash, a bracelet, a large diamond ring, and a white gold Piaget watch. He got several thousand out of it.
That's a wild find. I guess it's crazy what people toss away without thinking. He must have felt pretty lucky to come across that. It's interesting how a moment like that can change someone's day. The whole "one person's trash is another's treasure" really fits here. I wonder if he kept any of it or just sold it all off. Either way, that's some major score from a dumpster dive.
I went to an import furniture store to buy a bed frame. One of the employees told me that they didn't have any of the one I wanted because the shipment they had just received had been damaged, and they don't sell damaged items, but they were wink wink just sitting next to the dumpster waiting for the garbage pickup. Took a walk around back and saw 3 of the nicer, way more expensive beds leaning against the dumpster, each with a different part damaged. Came back that night with my car, took the good pieces from each one, and had a complete bed. Edit typo.
That's kind of clever. I mean, taking bits from different beds to make one that works is resourceful. Stores often throw out items that just need a small fix. You didn't even have to pay full price. It's like scavenging but with a purpose. You saved some cash and got a decent bed. Not a bad way to deal with a furniture hunt.
Here in Boston, we have what is known as Allston Christmas. Allston is the neighborhood where many of the college students live, and when their leases expire on August 31st, they all move. It becomes this crazy clusterfuck where there are no moving vans or companies available. So a lot of people end up just throwing their old furniture or heavy items out and just move using their cars or rented minivans. I've gotten a couch, a coffee table, 2 nightstands, several computers, most of which ended up going back into the garbage after scavenging parts, a monitor, a keyboard, a violin, and every chair in my house.
That sounds about right for Allston. I've seen a few friends go out during that time and come back with all sorts of stuff. It's like a treasure hunt if you know where to look. I once picked up a decent bookshelf and some kitchen chairs. Most of it ends up being junk, but it can be surprising what people toss. It's wild how much furniture is just left behind.
Years ago, we had an at-work garage sale where I bought a Sega Genesis for $5. On the way home that same day, I spotted a ripped, open garbage bag with a copy of Golden Axe lying on the road. The next week, someone broke into my place and stole both the Genesis and Golden Axe. I never even got to play the game, and thus ended my only Sega Genesis ownership experience in 30-plus years. My wife has asked me if I'll ever stop lamenting this event, and I've told her that only time will tell.
That's a pretty rough story. Finding that Sega Genesis for $5 must have felt like a score. And then spotting Golden Axe in the street? That sounds almost too good to be true. It's a bummer that everything got stolen before you even got to enjoy it. I guess sometimes it just isn't meant to be. Your wife's right though. Maybe one day it won't sting as much. Time can do that.
I've been fired by my job after a long period of depression. Went in on a weekend to pick up some stuff, and they were upgrading one of the server rooms. Happened to park next to a skip bin, and I looked inside to see one of the water-cooled PCs from the server room. Talked to one of the guys that was there, and he said no one wanted to pull it apart because of the liquid, so they pulled the drives and threw it away. Couldn't have been happier. It had 2x GTX 690 with water blocks, i7 with a high-end Asus Mobo, radiator, pumps etc. in a huge Corsair case with a 1200 WPSU. Wound up selling the lot for like $2,000 all up. Really lucky at a shitty time.
I can relate to that feeling. A friend of mine got laid off and ended up with a similar stroke of luck. He found an old gaming rig in a dumpster behind an office building. It was mostly intact, had some decent parts, and he flipped it for a nice amount online. It was a rough time for him, but that little win helped him get back on his feet a bit. Sometimes fortune just finds you.
I once found a Warner Brothers animation cell, original art autographed by Friz Frelling, from the movie Daffy Duck's Fantastic Island or whatever. It had the Tasmanian Devil pointing a cannon at Yosemite Sam. In the late 90s, I found a website that had a cell from the same movie of Yosemite Sam by himself in the same outfit. It was listed at $1,000. The one I had was a key frame, not an in-between. It had two characters, the cannon, and great facial expressions. In the late 90s, an online dealer offered me $500 for it. If I had to guess, back then my cell was worth $2,500, maybe more. Not sure what it'd go for now. It has a certificate of authenticity. It's legit. I'm a part-time pro comic book illustrator, so I know lots about original art. I found it in a dumpster at App State Uni, in Boone, North Carolina. Still have it in its original frame.
That's a cool find. It's interesting how valuable stuff can be, especially when you stumble upon it in unexpected places. Finding something like that in a dumpster is wild. The fact that you have a good grasp of original art makes it even better. A key frame with two iconic characters adds a lot of value. Wonder what it's worth now. It's nice that you still have it framed.
Story time. My great-grandma was a champion dumpster diver. She was 93 years old and still driving her car, volunteering at the local old folks' home, and baking enough cake and cookies for her entire senior condo complex daily. Every trash day, she would check out the dumpsters around her complex and then drive over to have her weekly coffee with the fam and show off her treasures. One week she did not show. Calls were made, and she was found crumpled in the bottom of a near-empty dumpster with a head wound. She did live, but suffered from memory loss and became a dramatically different person. The doctors never seemed to believe us that she was 100% before the fall and claimed it was typical old age dementia. On the funny side, she did begin swearing a lot and sewing these weird little bags for everyone. Follow-up comment: we never did have any idea what it was she was after.
It's wild how life can change in an instant. Your grandma sounds like such a character, diving into dumpsters at 93. It's sad she got hurt, but it's kind of funny how her personality shifted after. Swearing and crafting little bags must have made for some interesting family moments. I guess everyone has their quirks, even more so in their later years. It makes you wonder what drives us to do certain things.
Not my find, but in Leeds, UK, most of the students live in an area called Hyde Park. Many of these students can't be bothered to take a lot of stuff home, so will leave in the street, leading to an event known as Hyde Park Christmas, where everyone in the know will roam the streets looking for free shit. Chairs, sofas, cupboards, sometimes even clothes can be found free for the taking. In Hyde Park Christmas 2008 or 2009, one of my friends came back with a 50-foot plasma screen TV, two Xbox 360s plus 5 controllers, a PS3 plus 2 controllers, and a bunch of games. Apparently, there were some really rich students moving out that year.
That's a solid story. Hyde Park Christmas sounds like a wild time. I can imagine people scavenging for all sorts of things. Your friend scoring a big screen and multiple consoles must have been a fantastic find. I've seen people get some neat stuff during similar situations, but a 50 TV and all those gaming systems is next level. It's funny how some people just leave all that behind.
When I was a kid living in Baltimore, there was an empty lot near our house that had become an illegal dump that we regularly checked out. We got tons of toys and board games there. Fireball Island was one. Hundreds of dollars worth of perfectly good stuff. I still don't understand why people would throw that stuff out.
That's an interesting childhood memory. It's wild to think about the things people toss away. I guess some folks just don't see the value in things. Makes you wonder what other treasures are hiding in forgotten places. Finding a board game like Fireball Island is pretty cool, though. It's funny how a little adventure can lead to unexpected finds. I have a similar memory of finding random stuff in my neighborhood too.
I'm not a regular dumpster diver, but my ex-girlfriend was. In the middle of the night, we would walk over to a pizza place near her house and grab pizzas out of the dumpster. An entire dumpster full of untouched pizzas. Also, I live in a city with a large university, about 40,000 students. The end of the school year is known by all the locals as Hippie Christmas. I've never gone down to the dorms during Hippie Christmas, but I've heard tons of stories.
That sounds pretty wild. I get the whole free food thing, especially with pizza. Can't say I would dive into a dumpster myself, but I guess it has its perks. As for Hippie Christmas, I've seen some of the stuff people toss out at the end of the semester. It can be surprising what people don't want anymore. It's weird how college students just throw away perfectly good stuff without a second thought.
When I was much younger, I kind of played mom in a punk house I lived in. Made sure the boys had food and booze, got on them about cleaning more, and being just slightly less destructive and silly. One day I came home from work, and our living room was overflowing with candy. You could have nearly filled a bathtub with all the candy. They found it dumpster diving, obviously. I wanted to yell at them for taking all of it. There was no way they could eat that much candy. But they were just so happy. I just let them be happy. Most of the candy eventually got thrown out though.
That sounds like a time. Living in a punk house must have had its moments. You were kind of the glue keeping things together. They probably appreciated that you let them have their fun, even if it was a bit excessive. It's a good reminder that sometimes it's better to let people enjoy themselves, even if it doesn't make much sense. The candy situation definitely sounds chaotic, but you handled it well.
My girlfriend and I go to our secret spots a few times a month. Our best hauls have been several Keurigs, a mini fridge, a Circuit Explorer 1, Wii Fit boards, tons of packaged food and alcohol that haven't expired, tons of picture frames, books, a bike without a front tire, expensive dog and cat beds, and a working electric fence/collar.
Sounds like you and your girlfriend have a unique routine. Finding useful stuff like that must be fun. It's always interesting to see what you can come across. Those secret spots must have some hidden gems. A bike without a front tire seems like a challenge, but I guess it could be fixed. Overall, it seems like you have a good time scavenging together.
A big screen TV. When I was in college, a friend of mine wheeled a huge TV that someone had left out on the curb back to our dorm. We had to know if it would work, and his room was on the ground floor, so we wouldn't have to drag it up any stairs. We plugged it in, and it worked. The only thing that wasn't working was the sound, but we didn't care. We just hooked up a set of speakers, and it was fine. So we had this like 60-inch big screen TV that we got for free and used to play Smash Brothers. Also, I would recommend checking out Slash, our Slash dumpster diving.
That sounds like a classic college experience. Scoring a big screen TV from the curb? That's pretty resourceful. It's funny how little things like that can turn into the best memories. Playing Smash Brothers on a giant screen must have been a blast, even without sound. And yeah, /r/ dumpster diving has some interesting finds. Just goes to show you don't need to spend a lot to have a good time with friends.
I was throwing the trash in the dumpster by my apartment and found a computer tower. The previous owner had pulled the RAM and HDD, but had left everything else. I luckily had matching RAM for that motherboard, and all I had to buy was a $20 HDD, approximate 120 gigabytes, to install Linux. Now I have a spare computer, which I let my 5-year-old type on and get used to working with.
That's pretty neat. Finding a computer like that is a nice surprise. It's good that you were able to get it up and running with just a small investment. Letting your kid tinker with it is a smart way to introduce them to technology. Makes me think about the things we can salvage rather than just throw away.
Back in elementary school, late 90s, my friend and I found a box in the school's dumpster with a working NES and a shitload of games, including Duck Hunt and Gun Controller. We ran straight to his house and played it until we were in college. There was also a Sega Genesis and some games, but that one was actually broken.
That sounds like a cool find. I remember when I got my first console too. It was a big deal. Long sessions of gaming with friends always made the best memories. Duck Hunt was a classic. It's crazy how those moments stick with you, even as you grow up. The broken Sega was probably a bummer, but at least you had the NES to keep you entertained. Good times.
Not really a dumpster dive, but I was helping clean out a house after the residents had moved and was told that anything in the house was ours for the taking. I walk around and find nothing great, just old Xbox odds and ends. My sister sees an acoustic guitar and decides she's going to take it. Well, we went home and looked up the price, and turns out she had found a Taylor acoustic guitar. Ended up selling it to a guitar shop to completely cover her college laptop, MacBook Pro.
That's a cool story. It's funny how unexpected finds can turn into something useful. Just cleaning out a house, and your sister scores a nice guitar. It's nice she was able to sell it and cover her laptop. Shows that sometimes you don't need to spend a lot to get what you want. Just a little luck and timing.
I think I posted this before in a similar question, but my husband and I got our entertainment center by the side of the road. The PPL had put it out for trash. It was the perfect color for our den, and not one of those floor-to-ceiling monstrosities, but a tasteful, well-made one. We bought a new, big, fancy house last year, and our entertainment center is still in use.
It's kind of funny how that works out. Sometimes the best finds are right where you least expect them. An entertainment center, just chilling by the curb, turning into a perfect fit for your place. Goes to show you don't always have to spend a ton to make a space feel like home. Plus, it's nice that it still works for you even after moving to a new house.
I found a 55-gallon acrylic aquarium in a dumpster when I was 12 or 13. It started a 10-year addiction to tropical fish and enormous fish tanks that I have since recovered from. Besides that, I was breaking an old TV at the dump. This was back in the day when you could walk around the pit and pick, and also like throw away TVs. Anyways, I found a box full of old coins. 1906 Indian head penny, Mercury dimes, Buffalo nickel, 310 pennies, and some others. Best find as a child was dumpster porn. I no longer dive these days. I feel the quality of garbage has declined.
That's an interesting find. I knew a guy who used to dive for treasures too. He'd bring home all sorts of random stuff. One time, he found a vintage record player and a box of old vinyls. It was like digging through history. The excitement of finding something unexpected was always the best part. Took a lot of patience, but those little moments made it worth it. Now, he just keeps it simple and collects memories instead.
I dumpster dive at my own university, private liberal arts. Friends and I have found working speakers, unopened bottles of liquor, weed, a Mac once. The disk drive didn't work, but with the likes of internet and pirating, that's okay. Clothes, shoes, unopened food. The best are the textbooks. If they aren't disgusting or too old in edition, they can be sold back at the bookstore or online. I think this last semester we had about $600.
That's interesting. Dumpster diving at a university seems like a great way to find useful stuff. Getting a Mac, even with a broken disk drive, is a nice score. Selling textbooks for cash is smart too. I guess it makes sense to check what people throw away. You never know what treasures you'll find. Plus, it's kind of a fun adventure with friends. It sounds like you've made the most of it.
I used to work for a non-profit community agency back when I got out of school and noticed that there were several complete desktops left by the dumpster. I brought them in and set up new computers and a server for all 4 of the staff. After some quiet inquiries, I learned that the insurance company in the building did a full IT replacement that day. They were only 1 generation old and a massive upgrade for our agency. I also gave 2 desktops to our regular office volunteers.
That's a nice story. It's cool how you turned a waste situation into something useful. Setting up those desktops must have really helped the staff out. Plus, sharing them with the volunteers shows you care about the whole team. It's those little actions that can make a big difference in a community. Simple stuff like that can go a long way in making work a bit easier for everyone.
Not a fine, but a tip. If you see a big piece of furniture like a dresser that you really like but can't take at that exact moment, take a drawer from it. This will prevent anyone else from taking it, since it appears to be missing a drawer. So you can come back later to get the piece of furniture. This works unless someone figures out what you're doing and takes another drawer just to screw with you.
I remember a time my friend wanted this vintage dresser. He couldn't fit it in his car, so he pulled out a drawer and just walked away. It seemed clever, but a couple of days later, someone took another drawer. He ended up losing the whole thing. Kind of funny now, but at the moment, he was pretty annoyed. Just goes to show, plans don't always work out.
They used to host an electronic recycling dumpster at my place of employment. Over the span of a year or so, I had all the spare computers and parts one could want, a few receivers, 500 CD changer, MP3 players, more monitors than I could count, most of which we used to replace our monitors at work, multiple N64s, Xbox, Xbox 360s, etc.
Sounds like you scored big with that electronic recycling dumpster. Picking up spare computers and gaming consoles is a solid way to build up your setup. It's wild how much gear gets tossed out. Replacing monitors at work and grabbing old consoles must have felt pretty great. Gotta love the luck of finding hidden treasures like that.
The best would probably have to be a Red Bull fridge stand, like the one in gas stations, in a metal section of a landfill. It's one of the best places to scavenge. I found there a full propane tank, 5 hotel-style lounge beach chairs, hat rack, a full set of wire closet shelves, and an old-school kerosene heater.
That sounds like quite a haul. Finding useful stuff in a landfill is surprising. Props to you for digging through and uncovering all that. A propane tank and beach chairs would definitely come in handy. It's interesting what people discard without realizing its value. I guess one person's trash really is another person's treasure.
I am not a regular dumpster diver. However, my town has 4 weeks of spring cleanup, and there is plenty of loot to be found. The coolest thing I have found has to be the 1930s projector that still functions perfectly. I'll upload pics when I'm home. Managed to watch some old home movies on the thing. Smiley face.
That's interesting. Finding a 1930s projector sounds like a unique score. Watching old home movies must have been a trip down memory lane. It's cool how spring cleanup can lead to unexpected treasures. I'm sure there are more stories behind those old films too. Always nice to see what people throw away.
I dug through the trash a lot when I was in high school. My greatest find was during PE. When I was a sophomore, I managed to find an entire untouched chicken panini and an unopened bag of Lay's. It smelled fine and tasted great, so I ended up splitting it with my friend Chris. We ate like kings that day.
That's a wild find. It's funny how some trash can turn into a feast. I remember something similar with a friend, but it was a pizza slice we found outside. We were starving, so we didn't even hesitate. It's probably not the most hygienic choice, but sometimes you just roll with it. Memories like that stick with you, not because of the food, but because of the moment.
I found so many great things from laptops, televisions, Christmas trees / decorations, brand clothes, and shoes. Only take them home in the right size, food, etc. But my best found is in wooden box, and the shoes I consider buying that same day, but did not cause why buying shoes if I can find them, winking and laughing.
That sounds like a solid haul. People often overlook the small stuff, but there's something satisfying about finding useful things. The wooden box must be a nice catch, too. You just never know what you'll come across. Skipping out on buying shoes to find them for free is smart. It's always fun to score a good deal without spending.
I went to a very large university, and I would dumpster dive at the end of each semester. Aside from the expected used furniture, my friends and I would find hundreds of textbooks that people just tossed. We'd collect as many as we could, and then head to the bookstore to sell them back. Some were worthless, but others made it worth our time. Straight cash.
That's pretty clever. I had a friend in college who did the same thing. We would pile into his car after finals and hit the campus dumpsters. Some of those textbooks were valuable, surprisingly. It was like a treasure hunt. Made a decent chunk of change doing that for sure. Plus, it felt good to recycle what people didn't want anymore. Simple way to get by.
About 15 years ago, I was given a Sony 1 petabyte storage array just to get it out of a data center that some company had purchased and wanted it gone. We had to load it on the back of a semi-truck to get it out of there. It weighed 11,000 pounds. We parted out some of it and sold the rest as a smaller working unit. Made like $30,000 on it.
That's an interesting story. Getting a huge storage array for free is pretty rare. The hassle of moving something that heavy must have been a pain, though. It's cool you were able to sell it and make a decent profit. It's nice when things like that work out, turning something unwanted into cash. Gotta love those unexpected finds.
I've never dove into a dumpster, but I used to work at a dump. Best find was a bunch of Louis Vuitton handbags and luggage. Made a lot of money off those. I also found a Sega Genesis, PS1, PS2, 2 PS3s, 2 Wii's, and an Xbox 360. All were in working order or a simple fix, and one of the PS3s even had a can of paint dumped on it.
That's a solid haul. Working at a dump definitely puts you in a unique position for finds. It's kind of wild to think about how much stuff people throw away. Those Louis Vuitton bags must have been a nice surprise, and getting working game consoles is a bonus. It sounds like you had a pretty interesting job, just sifting through other people's trash for hidden gems.
Not exactly a dumpster dive, but how about on the best find on the side of a busy highway? Yep, our best find was my so coming home from work and saw a curious box. He had a gut feeling that it should be looked at, turned around and approached the box again. He thought, what the fuck? I'll just pull over and try not to get killed. The box was on the incline off the side. Clearly some dumb ass didn't know that it had dropped off the delivery truck or whatever it was riding in before it was left. Inside the box was a fucking desktop computer. I was at my friend's house and her is a computer geek, and he was totally stoked at finding it. He suggested that the two of them go back and scour the highway and see if there was more. Well, fuck me running sideways, backwards, and call me a monkey's uncle. They didn't come back empty-handed. They brought home another one.
So, my partner found a box on the side of the highway and decided to check it out. Turned out to be a desktop computer. I was at a friend's place, and her partner, who's into tech, got really excited about it. They both went back to see if there were more finds. In the end, they came back with another computer. Just wild how things like that happen, right?
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.